Hi, I'm actor Ian Champion, and welcome to History of Horror Cinema, my personal podcast tour of the good, bad, and the ugly of horror movie history. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe. The Mask of Fu Manchu, 1932. Dr. Fu Manchu has been a byword for the grand supervillain since he first appeared in serialized novels by Sax Rohmer in 1912. It's easy to see why he captured the British public's imagination. His Asian inscrutability and genocidal hostility toward whites played perfectly into the Edwardian era's fear of the foreigner in all forms, heading into World War I. All manner of untrustworthy qualities and intentions could be attached to a figure who is not British. Not being one of us implies his morality is already suspect. What would such a man be capable of if not gifted by birth to become a well-bred gentleman in the most civilized country on earth? A land of sportsmanship and playing the white man, with all the imaginary associations that entails. Would he not compensate for his unfortunate cultural upbringing by embracing evil, particularly in a far-off land whose practices we don't know, and are therefore presumed unspeakably barbaric until we educate them correctly by colonization? There's gratitude. Good Lord, one could work oneself up into an imperial lava at the thought of such lurking malevolence. But seriously, Fu Manchu in his many forms, such as cinema, TV, and comic books, taps into just the same irresistible fictional demonization as the Germans in historic war comics do even today, thrilling the schoolboy and adult alike, but with added Far Eastern exoticism. Rohmer knew he was onto a good thing when he created the character. Born as the very English Arthur Henry Ward, he began his working life as a civil servant in Birmingham, till he could make a living as a writer, initially as a sketch writer and biographer for music hall artists such as Little Tich. Eventually he became a full-time fiction author under the mystical pseudonym of Sax Rohmer. His main inspirations were the fantastical Edgar Allan Poe and, more notably, Arthur Conan Doyle, with whom he had much in common when it came to shaping and responding to the success of his most famous literary creation. The Fu Manchu plot formula centered around the clashes between this Asiatic megalomaniac and the fine men of the British establishment, namely Dr. Petrie, who narrated the stories a la Dr. Watson, and Dennis Nayland Smith of the Secret Service, who rose to influence by way of Scotland Yard. As Conan Doyle found with Sherlock Holmes, the association with such a singular creation can be a grinding limitation, and instead of similarly killing off his hero, Rohmer simply stopped producing the series after 3 novels. After a gap of some 14 years, from 1917 to 1931, he revived the characters with a knighted Nayland Smith when the novels became lucrative movie translations starring Warner Oland as the titular tyrant in the late 1920s. The Mask of Fu Manchu was filmed in 1932 by William Randolph Hearst's Cosmopolitan Picture Studio, a smart example of business synergy, as he produced films that had mainly pre-existed as serializations in his own magazines, such as Cosmopolitan. This allowed him to publicize his released movies in his magazines, and gave studios with whom he had distribution deals prized access to his vast fund of story properties. In the case of this film, it was M.G.M. We are briskly walked into the plot of The Mask by an urgent meeting between Sir Dennis, Lewis Stone, and Egyptologist Sir Lionel Barton, played by Lawrence Grant, in which the explorer is warned of the critical urgency of his bid to find the relics of Genghis Khan. It seems the power-crazed Fu Manchu wants to get his hands on the sword and mask as well, through which he will become the occult reincarnation of the ancient warrior, and the white man will be slaughtered by a bloodbath emanating from the east. This simply isn't cricket for the Foreign Office, so Whitey must get there first. Stone would find lasting fame in Mickey Rooney's long-running Andy Hardy film series, playing his father Judge James. Lawrence Grant went on to appear in the horror films Werewolf of London in 1935, as the Burgomaster in Son of Frankenstein, and in Spencer Tracy's remake of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, all of which I've covered in previous episodes. Barton's mission is soon derailed, though, when he is chloroformed by masked Chinese kidnappers and presented to Fu himself, Boris Karloff. The new Frankenstein star was on loan to M.G.M. whilst Universal was still awaiting a suitable new in-house horror role for him. However, this project for their rival also didn't have a finished script. Karloff recalled, "It was a shambles. For about a week before we got started, I kept asking for a script. I was met with roars of laughter at the idea that there was a script." On the first shooting day, he sat patiently while makeup artist Cecil Holland made him up as Fu, transforming him via a long, thin moustache and reshaping his eyes and ears, adding Asian eyepieces and long fingernails. It was an elaborate process taking 2.5 hours, and even after that the text problem still hadn't been resolved. He was landed with a dense 4-page speech with no time to prepare just before being made up, which I can vouch for as being hideously unfair, especially on your first day. After that had been percolating in his mind, upon Holland finishing, he was then given a replacement script now written in offensively pidgin English. This unsatisfactory treatment would be par for the course during filming. Fortunately, in the film, all of Karloff's final dialogue is uttered in silky, urbane tones of perfect English, all the more appropriate for a character who is a hyphenate of earned doctorates from all the best universities. Karloff actually appears to savour his lines pleasingly, relishing the Bondian bad guy hospitality with edge. See that he is quite comfortable, for the present. Teasing Barton with a gratefully received glass of actually salt water and cackling at the cruel joke, the fiend. Even his gorgeous western-looking daughter Farlow C, Myrna Loy, has her siren-like charms undermined slyly upon her entrance by him. My ugly and insignificant daughter. At least the Mask of Fu Manchu's director, Charles Brabin, replacing the sacked Charles Vidor, had money spent on detailed and convincing set design, beginning with the intriguing opening to the tomb guarded by 2 ornate warrior demons. The expedition party breaking it open consists of the distinguished Jean Hersholt as the German Dr. Berg, Barton's daughter Sheila, Karen Morley, her fiancé Terry Granville, Charles Starrett, and MacLeod, David Torrance. Barton's abduction means time is even more precious. Berg wastes none admiring the beautifully rendered design. "Mac, give me the axe." MacLeod is tragically given a weapon in reply that night when a coolie zip-lines into his room while he's guarding the treasure. He is fatally stabbed while shooting the assassin. I must say a quick word about the lovers who I'd rather had traded places with him. The Yellow Peril, after activated by the news of Barton's kidnapping, is certainly embodied by the overripe histrionics of Morley. She is a perfect match for Starrett's Terry, the lantern-jawed, pith-helmeted hero-explorer. Her unconvincing wails bounce off his stiff granite determination like bullets twanging off a cliff face. With their line deliveries proving attention-drawing liabilities as performers, they are made for each other. After MacLeod's backstabbing, tense Terry sets his chin to stun and secretly takes the sword and mask to Fu, hoping to exchange them for Barton. Fu suavely claims Sir Lionel is merely his guest. Fu links the sword up to a crackling Tesla coil to test the sword's veracity, which is bad news for Terry as it is fried to ashes. Our hero didn't know that Nayland Smith, recently arrived, switched a phony scimitar with it. He is whipped mercilessly under the perversely thrilled gaze of Farlow C, who is developing the hots for his Western integrity. She wants him as a plaything, which Daddy is only too happy to oblige, since it gives him the chance to perform surgery and inject Terry with dragon's blood, my own blood, and the organs of different reptiles mixed with the magic brew of the scared 7 herbs. Terry is spaced out when he returns to the expeditionary camp, numbly pretending to his friends that Nayland Smith wants the real relics to be taken by him. Sheila's feminine intuition spots that his acting has suddenly become more naturalistic, but they go along to see where he will lead them. She exposes the fallacy in Farlow C's brainwashing, bringing Terry back to his stoic senses by appealing to his deep-seated love for her. This allows Karloff to grandly enjoy announcing even more tortures, including the Room of the Golden Peacock for her, and a fiendish sand-timer-controlled seesaw poised over a pit of crocodiles for Nayland Smith. These cliffhanger threats fondly recall those fun Republic serials of the era, and the climactic use of a 1,000,000-volt ray gun by our heroes is pure Dr. Zarkov. The Mask of Fu Manchu made only a small profit upon release. A later 1960s series of films starring Christopher Lee fared better. Then again, the disastrous 1979 The Fiendish Plot of Dr. Fu Manchu placed a sad final cap on Peter Sellers' incredible career. Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe.